resentment, pride, and the desire for self-glory? How do you forgive hurts that no one else sees or knows about? And who can I talk to about all of these things? What had held me back? I didn't ask because I believed I was the only pastor's wife at our church, and quite possibly everywhere, who didn't know what she was doing, and I couldn't admit my insecurities. From where I write, Kyle and I spent almost 8 years in that church, a large, multi-staff and multi-ministry church in the American Bible Belt. He led the college ministry and eventually took on missions as well. We grew in marriage, expanded our family through the births of our 3 boys, and internalized ministry lessons we learned both through trial and error and through the example of other pastors and their spouses on staff. Around the time our 3rd baby was born, God put an inescapable and holy discontent in our hearts. We sensed He was calling us to something beyond college and missions, and after much prayer and seeking wise counsel, the holy discontent finally subsided into peace when we alighted on the idea that God was calling us to plant a church. 6 months later, we moved into a new home in a small city I hadn't known existed a year prior, Charlottesville, Virginia. This new place was liberal-leaning, intellectually driven, and just outside the Bible Belt, and we found ourselves facing newfound ministry challenges. For one, we didn't know a soul, so there was that. But also, we were church planting, which we quickly discovered was a totally different creature than serving at an established church. We started our church with 10 people in our living room, 5 of whom carried the Hoover last name. I spent the entire first gathering chasing a crawling baby and keeping a toddler and preschooler snacked and entertained while my husband taught from Philippians. I missed most of the teaching time because I was off wiping bottoms in the bathroom. There were tears, the first of many to come when the 5 non-Hoovers left, and there were new questions and uncertainties nagging at me. How am I supposed to manage all of this? How will I engage people when I'm always wrangling my kids in a different room? How do I help my husband take breaks from the constant demands of ministry? What do I do with my own spiritual and emotional needs when I'm always pouring out for others? How can I ensure my kids grow up to love God and His church? Will ministry always be this exhausting? Am I going to make it? I thought I'd left all my questions, insecurities, and uncertainties behind me at our previous church, but this new ministry opportunity opened up many more that serving in an established church had never revealed. I write this from Charlottesville, over a decade removed from those first Bible studies in our living room. God grew our church slowly but surely, one relationship at a time. We've since added elders and a few staff members. I've had my hands in literally every ministry of the church except men's ministry. And we've raised our boys, now teenagers, as pastors' kids within this faith family we've planted. In other words, we've made it this far and only by the grace of God. Although the tent of church planting remains, our church meets in an elementary school gym, God has established us in this community we've grown to call home. I tell you this, dear pastor's wife, to give my writing context for you. As you listen, you may find I don't completely understand your context for ministry. Aside from short-term trips, we've never served outside of the United States. My husband has not been bivocational, and we've not lived in an urban center. However, although we've served in both large churches and small, inside and outside the American Bible Belt, in both church and parachurch settings, in our first year of marriage, my husband led a parachurch ministry. And in both established churches and a church plant, my experience and context are not ultimately what I rely on as I offer you these sections. For what I proclaim is not myself, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with myself as your servant for Jesus' sake. 2 Corinthians 4:5. In other words, I've written this book to you as that veteran pastor's wife, purposefully coming down the street to see you, sinking into the cushions on the other end of your couch, and digging deeply with you into the challenges we all face at some point in our ministry. Those insecurities and uncertainties you have, you're not the only one. Imagine my demeanor with you like this as you listen to my words. I'm leaning forward, listening. I'm willing to hear and address the things you're afraid to say and ask because you think you should be further along by now. I'll tell you stories of my own foibles and fumbles and the tangled webs.